Emerging 350 million years ago, it's crucial to life on Earth. Home to 80% of the planet's biodiversity, forests and their treasures guarantee the survival of 1 in 5 human beings. But day after day, forests are shrinking as mankind grapples with an increasingly urgent dilemma. How can we reconcile our ever-rising demands with the need to protect forests' precious resources? In the four corners of the Earth, forests are buzzing with innovative solutions that also respect the living world. Men and women are drawing on scientific research, ancestral traditions, and their imaginations to reinvent the forestry practices of tomorrow. Here's how these pioneers are joining forces to rewrite the great history of man and the forest. There's an island at the far end of the world where trees are giants that can tower up to 100 meters tall. Tasmania.
Two Towers is one of the largest, if not the largest, eucalyptus on the planet, which also makes it the largest flowering plant alive. It's fought many battles over its 500-year lifespan, and so we're lucky to still have it alive. Every time I see it, I still feel a little bit emotional to think that something so magnificent is still in our...
These gigantic trees native to Tasmania are famous throughout the world. They're called Eucalyptus regnans. This forest is a remnant of the most ancient geological eras in the history of the Earth. Once upon a time, the forest covered the entire island. Wedged between Australia and the Antarctic, Tasmania was uninhabited for ages. Its giant trees reigned supreme over the land. But today, 500,000 people live here. To measure the impact humans are having on the forest, botanist Brett Mifsud heads up into the Eucalyptus regnans trees.
Well, it's an awful shame because so much of the forest was logged in this area. So much of it is gone, and there are so few trees like this left alive for us to experience and enjoy and climb and research.
Like Brett Mifsud, researchers and nature lovers have given themselves the mission of recovering the natural heritage that currently suffers from too great a human impact. But they're butting heads with the country's culture, for Tasmanians are lumberjacks, and the gigantic trunks of the old eucalyptus make good logging. In just 25 years, they can grow up to 50 meters tall. The 19th century colonists knew what they were doing. Tasmania was built on the treasures of its forest. But the lumberjacks' axes were replaced by the machinery of the booming industry, and the majestic Eucalyptus regnans by even more productive varieties. As a result, after 2 centuries, 1/3 of Tasmania's original forest has disappeared. Destruction that has divided the entire country. On the one side, militant ecologists, guardians of the vulnerable forest. On the other, loggers and foresters, proud of their traditions and the driving force of the island's economy. Their clashes are so violent that the press has dubbed them the Forest War. The conflict has been raging for over 30 years. The stakes are huge, saving Tasmania's forest and its last remaining giants. Among these activists, Vika Bailey is the spokesman for the Wilderness Society, the most powerful tree protection movement in Tasmania. The Eucalyptus regnans has become the standard-bearer of this battle, which first began on political terrain. The Forest War is behind the creation of the world's first Green Party.
For me personally, it was incredibly important to fight for these trees because of what they represent. And to see them torn down, burnt, turned into paper products demonstrates an absolute disregard and disrespect for nature and the planet itself.
Felling the giants also ruins the magic of a forest that harbors a plethora of secrets. Beneath their canopy lies a realm that resembles a fairyland. The scenery is so enchanting that the trees and paths here bear names borrowed from the fictional universe of The Lord of the Rings. This eucalyptus is called Gandalf's staff, in honor of the venerable wizard. But the elders of the forest do more than just inspire amblers. They play a major role in the ecosystem by creating shade for the understory and ensuring the regeneration of the forest. Tasmania is home to a temperate rainforest, a natural environment that seems surprising right next door to arid, drought-prone Australia. The eucalyptus developed a remarkable strategy in order to populate the lush island. It created close to 800 subspecies specifically adapted to damp climes. To understand this little-known ecosystem, botanist Jessie Boutel searches for clues to how it works.
$36.5. So half is 74.4. So the full diameter is 148.8 centimetres. I'd say the decomposition is 2, category 2, and there is presence of a fire scar. The direction is 134 degrees. The eucalypts, when they grow really tall, they have, in most cases, a really big canopy. And because of this canopy, it tends to shade everything else underneath it. So you get a system that has to be shade tolerant, because if it's not shade tolerant, then you won't have sun, so it can't live. So most shade tolerant tree species or understory species tend to be the ones that you see around me. And they generally live underneath these eucalypt trees because they cannot live anywhere else, unless you get a canopy gap, in which case you tend to get more eucalyptus trees growing in these gaps. So eucalypts are really, really important for sort of constructing this type of ecosystem, which is a rainforest.
Beneath the canopy, huge fern trees thrive. Along with the eucalyptus, they're the soul of the forest. At these giants' feet lies a hidden world of unsuspected treasures.
It's hard to believe when the trees are so spectacular and the ferns all look so amazing. And actually, the greatest source of biodiversity and the greatest number of species lies in these very small mosses.
Tasmania's temperate rainforest is still relatively unknown. How many species grow in the shade of these giant trees? This miniature exploration is the project biologist Scott McAdam has taken on. So far, he's identified hundreds of varieties of moss and microscopic ferns.
This species is Herpesia vario, which is a lycophyte. The ancestors of the lycophytes once grew into 30-metre tall trees that dominated forests at the equator in the tropics 400 million years ago. These ferns on the trunk of this tree fern are unique in that their leaves are only 1 cell thick, and they're very sensitive to the amount of water in the environment. They can desiccate completely and dry out, and then when it rains, they can rehydrate. And we don't know much about how the physiology behind how these plants are able to desiccate and rehydrate and survive on the trunks of these tree ferns. My passion in science is evolution. This is part of a study that we are conducting to investigate the evolution of how land plants use water and how this might have changed through evolutionary time. Because if we know those things, then we can better predict how these plants will respond into the future.
These tiny ferns seem to have emerged from a time machine. They grew here even before there were dinosaurs. The knowledge they contain speaks of the very origins of the Earth.
The ferns that we find in these forests are like a portal to the past. Coming into these forests is like walking into prehistoric forests. Very similar to forests in South America or the fossil forests that we see in the fossil record from Antarctica when it was ice-free 40 million years or more ago.
400 million years ago, these land masses, which today lie several thousand kilometers apart, formed one single supercontinent, Gondwana. This was when the mosses and ferns we find here first appeared. 180 million years ago, Gondwana broke up and Tasmania was separated from the other continental blocks. Tasmania's temperate rainforest is one of the last remnants of this era. Scientific research has helped us understand how valuable this amazing heritage is, and led to a turning point in the forest war.
But despite the opportunity, the Wilderness Society...
In 2011, after decades of conflict, ecologists and loggers came together to sign a peace treaty, and UNESCO ratified their truce.
...that helped bring together loggers and greenies.
In 2013, after decades of advocacy, protest, scientific research and campaigning, the UNESCO's World Heritage Committee accepted a nomination to have these areas added to the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area. And without the community standing up and saying no, without people advocating, and then ultimately without UNESCO and its World Heritage Committee saying this is an area of global significance, places like this would continue to be cut down in Tasmania.
Since the peace deal, nearly half of the land has been safeguarded by UNESCO. Within these areas, the original forest and its giants have been preserved. Ecologists, nevertheless, keep a close watch to make sure boundaries are respected. Here we've reached the border of a protected area. On the other side, logging companies continue to do as they please. As proof that tensions still run high, some parcels are protected by police.
I see a kind of destruction that only I see on TV in third world countries, not in Australia. You have to cry. It's just so wrong.
The methods used inflame emotions that are already highly strained. This helicopter is dropping thousands of incendiary devices containing a highly flammable jellied petroleum. When they hit the ground, they start ferocious fires that can burn for weeks on end. The idea is for the fires to destroy the debris left after logging, sterilize the ground, and form a bed of ashes that will foster the germination of seeds from a highly productive strain of eucalyptus. Here, the old-growth forest is being replaced by fast-growing trees at an alarming rate. Ecologists condemn the combustible material for its toxic pollutants. The substance is so loathed that it's been nicknamed napalm after the bombs used during the Vietnam War. Forestry Tasmania, the government organisation responsible for part of the unprotected forest area, has an entirely different opinion of the controversial method. Biologist Tim Wardlaw offers scientific endorsement for it.
Napalm, it could. We have to burn the forest. We have to, after harvesting, if we don't do burning, we don't get a forest. It's as simple as that. So the question of how we burn the forest is secondary to the need of, that's just part of the equation.
No fire, no new forest. The eucalyptus can only release its seeds at extremely high temperatures. Fire is so essential to the regeneration of the Tasmanian forest that the eucalyptus has developed an astonishing strategy. It promotes its own burning. With its bark and the flammable oil in its leaves, it doesn't take much to turn the tree into an explosive ball of fire. As the temperature climbs, the oil is vaporized and dispersed above the canopy, igniting other trees in turn. The burnt ground is temporarily rid of predators and other plants that compete with seedlings for light, water, and nutrients. The eucalyptus uses fire to ensure its chances of survival and to regenerate the forest. But unfortunately, this ingenious variety also produces the best timber.
The forests are fabulous. Tasmania is it's a beautiful place, and I guess it's that interplay between beauty and utility. So we've got some of the most beautiful landscapes and some of the most beautiful forests in the world, but they're also some of the most productive forests in the world. So for producing wood, this is one of the best places to do it, in a natural forest.
When it comes to the forest war dividing the nation, more than just the trees are at stake. It's all the life those trees have allowed to develop. The temperate rainforest is home to 130 varieties of birds and 25 mammal species. Outside of the sanctuary protected by UNESCO, some of these animals could very well disappear. The threat strikes a chord in Tasmania, as it's already witnessed the extinction of one of its endemic creatures. The thylacine, a marsupial also known as the Tasmanian tiger. This footage was filmed at the Hobart Zoo in Tasmania's capital city. In it we see Benjamin, the last known thylacine to exist. It died on September the 7th, 1936. The largest carnivorous marsupial still alive in the world today has become emblematic of the island, the Tasmanian devil. Extinct from the Australian mainland 400 years ago, devils currently only exist in Tasmania. But they too are now in danger. An entire generation of young scientists have rallied to the devil's side to prevent the unthinkable. David Hamilton, a researcher at the University of Hobart, is one of them. He's very involved in the protection of devils, which got their nickname from their blood-curdling cry. Like the thylacine, for years devils were accused of wreaking havoc in farms and were systematically hunted. Since 1941, Tasmanian devils have been protected by law, but 20 years ago, their population began to plummet.
It's closed, hooray.
The reason for their decline, a mysterious disease that scientists are desperately trying to understand.
We have a devil. Fantastic.
Devils are nocturnal scavengers and contribute to Tasmania's ecological balance by feeding on carrion. They also help protect the island's birds by limiting the presence of feral cats and foxes, birds' main predators.
The devils aren't really like anyone expects them to be. They have this reputation from having a bad temper and being very aggressive, but when we're handling them like this, they're actually very docile and really nice to work with, which is lovely. It's 21.0. Where's Keenan? Look at the back feet. They've got really good grip for running along. They've got these nice little pads. So she's only a couple of years old. So I'm just checking to see if she's got any DFTD lesions or tumours around her face.
DFTD, devil facial tumor disease, the terrible cancer ravaging the devil population. It attacks the jaw and makes it impossible for the animals to eat. But most perplexing to scientists is the fact that this cancer has a characteristic that is as rare as it is disturbing.
It's a cancer that occurs in Tasmanian devils, but the unique thing about it is that it's transmissible between individuals. So one devil can pass a cancer that it's got onto another animal, which is very unique. When they have their usual fighting interactions and bite one another around the oral cavity, then cancer cells transfer, and then the new devil will start showing signs of this, of DFTD, which is something that will mean that the animal usually dies within about 3 to 6 months, which is pretty shattering. So she is disease-free, so she looks fine. And she's an adult animal, so she's in the population that can pick up the disease.
80% of the devil population has already been wiped out. This puts the entire Tasmanian ecosystem at risk.
where devils are in the ecosystem, they're exceptionally important to the entire Tasmanian fauna because they're at the top end of the food chain. It's 34.2. So they're controlling everything that's down below it. And if you lose devils from an ecosystem, it can have all sorts of other effects on everything down the chain.
A vaccination is already being tested, but the infection is spreading throughout the land, and a second transmissible cancer has been identified. And although no link has been found between deforestation and this terrible disease, it has become more urgent than ever to safeguard the devil's habitat everywhere on the island, and more particularly outside of protected areas. So while the forest war divides the Tasmanian population, the fight to save the devils has won unanimous support.
The devil's just a very charismatic animal, and it's a bit of an icon of Tasmania as well. So I think a lot of people in Tasmania, and even wider than that, feel a bit of an affinity with it, and they would be extremely sad if it were to become extinct or if it were to go down. And I think the fact of one of the last big extinctions, the thylacine, happened in Tasmania. That was the big carnivore, the big marsupial carnivore, and that got wiped out. I think a lot of people in Tasmania feel they almost have a kind of duty to the natural world and the environment to try and keep this one going.
The forest peace deal marked a truce between green militants and loggers. Now it falls upon scientists to pick up the fight, using the weapon of knowledge to shed light on the treasures of Tasmania's forest.
Let's just stop here and just have a listen for a second, see if we can hear any birds.
In this crusade, ornithologist Dejan Stojanovic went out on a limb to push back the logging industry. And it paid off, thanks to an unexpected ally, the swift parrot.
There's one parent coming back right now. Both parents are feeding, but the male fed quickly and quite well, and the female seemed to kind of hesitate and didn't feed for too long.
Swift parrots are migratory birds originating in Australia. But every spring, they fly to Tasmania to breed.
So I'm going to climb the tree to get the nestlings, and then once I've got them in the bag, I'm going to climb back down, and then Fernanda is going to help me, and we're going to measure their bodies to see how they're growing and to see whether or not they're healthy. Oi! That's what we don't want to happen. A rather large tree just fell down in the forest. Wow.
Each year, the parrot population is declining. Today, there are estimated to be fewer than 2,500 adults, an alarming figure.
So the swift parrot is endangered because across its breeding range in Tasmania, it's lost a large amount of the hollow-bearing forest that it needs and safe places to put its babies in hollow trees. Without enough forest, the parrots are too constrained in their choice and might be forced to nest where sugar gliders are more likely to eat them. And sugar gliders are the main cause of nesting failure in swift parrot breeding populations.
Dejan seizes the moment when both parents have gone off to search for food. He collects the two baby birds from their nest in a hole in the tree.
Swift parrots are an important indicator of the health of the forest. In Tasmania, swift parrots only nest in really old, mature forest. And the reason for that is because it's only old, mature forest that produces the kinds of holes in trees that swift parrots need to nest. So that's why we study them, because if something's wrong with the forest, we should be able to tell on the basis of how the swift parrot population is going. This nestling's probably about just under 3 weeks old now. You can still see some of the beautiful colour, even though he's all wet. Oh, sorry, Fernando. This one is 34.2. He's very wet. He's been in his hollow, and because of the rain over the last few days. Yeah, but very important thing. We'll weigh him. 60.3 grams. Science has just been key for understanding how these systems work. I mean, it's through hard research, climbing trees, understanding exactly what swift parrots choose when they are in a forest, what kind of tree holes are important to them that help us understand what we need to do to protect them.
Dejan's work has already paid off. The swift parrot has been officially recognised as critically endangered.
We felt really proud that the swift parrot was recently uplisted to critically endangered by the IUCN, which is a really important step for recognising how threatened this animal is. So in response to the uplisting of the species as critically endangered, a moratorium of logging on logging swift parrot habitat was declared. You can see this, look at them, they're being affectionate to one another. He's giving his brother a kiss.
Loggers must now respect the nesting zones of these little birds on their own land. Dejan's victory has brought new hope to the island. It's a sign that thanks to science, conservation is gaining ground, even in the areas not protected by the peace deal. But in 2014, the forest war took a dramatic turn of events. The Australian Prime Minister came to the rescue of the timber industry to relaunch Tasmania's moribund economy.
We have quite enough national parks, we have quite enough locked up forests already. In fact, in an important respect, we have too much locked up forest.
He announced his intention to open up 74,000 hectares on the World Heritage listing. The peace deal was immediately shattered into pieces, because one of the timber industry's expansion strategies targets, among others, a precious and rare variety, the Huon pine. One of the vulnerable areas lies on the banks of the Gordon River, an emblematic sanctuary of the Huon pine. Logging has been forbidden here since the 1990s.
It's been 1,000 years of fairy, wiped up like a shade of tea.
Ron Morrison is one of the last foresters to have cut the trunks of these prized trees. Like most Tasmanians, he comes from a long line of lumberjacks. Today, it's his granddaughter's turn to walk in the footsteps of her ancestors and discover the legendary green gold that made the fortune of her island.
We're here. Not so bright, is it, up here out of the sun? Another million pine there. Might be 5 years old. Here's another one, about tall as you, but it's older than you. It's probably 15 years old, maybe even 20. The oldest Huon pine that they know of is 3,400 years old, still growing. See there? It's the slowest growing tree, certainly in Tasmania. It takes 5 years for it to be that high.
The history of the Huon pine began here 200 years ago. The tree was named after French explorer Huon de Kermadec and is extremely slow growing. Whereas the Eucalyptus regnans is one of the tallest trees in the world, the Huon pine is no doubt one of the oldest.
Have a smell. The Huon pine. So the tree's been dead for 90 years and you smell the oil in the wood. The wood does not decay in the water. Supplies on the trolley, and 2 men would wind it up, wind the winch up. But all the shafts have gone rusty. My grandfather, he worked here, up where we're going, with horses, the draft horses, 76 years ago, nearly.
The timber industry in Tasmania was established by convicts sent over from England in the 19th century. And European colonists made their fortune off the Huon pine, prized for its fine grain, golden colour, and rot-resistant properties. Thousands of these trees were used to build warships and merchant vessels.
When I was young, I worked in the bush with my father as well. He'd take me to the bush when I was about 3 years old. Live in the bush, in the camps in the bush. You catch wallabies to eat. Dad used to make the bread in a camp oven. They'd take flour and rice. And then I had to go to school. But I didn't go to school much either. Dad would quite often take me to work on school days. So I learned how to cut trees down at a very early age.
Gradually, the convicts and small-scale logging gave way to family sawmills, which in turn were replaced by large industrial operations. But the Huon pine grows so slowly that it almost entirely disappeared.
The big companies came in and they had all the rights, they were supported by government, and really it just wasn't the best thing for the state because the small families or the small timber operators really didn't do that much damage to the bush because it was selective. They just took one tree here, one there, but when the big companies came in, it was all clear felled, and then burnt, and then trees planted. It was just a huge change to the way the timber industry had operated in Tasmania. One X mark there, and then another one up here. So the old bushmen, they hit the tree with the axe. Now, you listen, Ella. You listen. Makes a hollow noise.
Young Tasmanians can still discover this prized tree. It was saved from extinction by a law passed 20 years ago to protect it. Some families whose livelihood used to depend entirely on the Huon pine have managed to adapt to the legislation. They've turned their sawmills into living museums. Ecotourism is booming these days, and the Huon pine has become an attraction on a par with the Tasmanian devil. People also come for a taste of history and to learn about the island's pioneers.
It's easy to work. It's beautiful stuff. All the wood turners love it, but the wood turners like the hard stuff, see? That would polish better than a bit of softwood.
In this workshop near the Gordon River, sculptor Greg Duncan pays homage to the first adventurers who landed in this corner of the world, where the only resource was wood. Greg Duncan has embarked upon an extraordinary and challenging endeavour, chronicling the history of Tasmania's forest in a huge fresco sculpted out of the forest's own wood.
Tasmanians, this was all once founded on convicts and hard men, hard treatment, hard laws. I think Huon pine survived, it's resilient, and yeah, it's just the nature of the timber, also very much similar to the nature of the people in Tasmania. Whether they're cutting the trees down or working in forests like that, or whether they're in parks and wildlife and things like that, definitely the trees are there's no doubt about it, it's the soul of this state. We've got to look after it. We've got to use the trees in a sustainable nature and sustainable way. I know that seems to be a bit of a cliche these days, but it's very true, more so now than ever. The trees have a value to them, and not just in the sense of making paper and things like that, but just aesthetically, they calm the soul.
This soul is honoured over a stretch of 100 metres. The fresco is called The Wall, a homage to lumberjacks, the DNA of the island.
I wouldn't consider them bad boys. I think in those times no one even questioned. It was open up, make gung-ho, make everything happen. Just strive to open up the land and all that sort of thing. We didn't question anything. And having said that, a lot of this was done manually, so it probably didn't create the devastation to the degree that we can do today, with the machinery and that sort of things.
Machinery which could once again do serious damage to the Huon pine and Eucalyptus regnans populations and the ecosystem they harbour if the UNESCO World Heritage listing is put back on the table. The request to delist the protected forests is even more astonishing in that ever since the peace deal, the timber industry in Tasmania has made great strides towards sustainable forestry. Ecotourism is not their only initiative. Another pushes the very frontiers of possibility, an aquatic frontier. Back in the 1960s, many dams were erected to meet the island's electrical needs, and vast expanses of forest were flooded as a result. One of the reservoirs created in 1987 was Lake Pieman. The ghosts rising today from the water are the remains of these former forests. Darren Crook is in charge of a highly unusual logging operation.
Just checking, Darren, am I pulling out redboard or not?
So we're on top of essentially a celery top pine forest. So where we are is the riverbed. The riverbed's about 45 metres below us. And these trees that you can see where just the heads are sticking up, we've still got 20 25, 30 metres of tree underneath us. So yeah, it's quite exciting when you think about how much is out here. A lot of trees that were, for all intents and purposes, lost, but we're now able, through technology, to recover those and bring them up to the surface for people to use in fine furniture making and boat building.
The Hydrowood project is based on an audacious idea: salvaging timber from flooded forests. An underwater sonar locates the most prized timbers: eucalyptus, Huon pine, myrtle. Next, a telescopic arm on a barge plunges as deep as 26 meters to retrieve the trees. Once they're cut, the trunks are hoisted up onto a barge. In December 2015, Hydrowood experienced its first commercial success. Furniture makers and naval architects were enticed by these trees, coaxed from their 30-year underwater slumber.
When we started this project, most people thought that we were crazy, we had rocks in our head, we were stupid, that you couldn't possibly harvest a tree when it was underwater. But people are doing it around the world, recovering logs around the world. So it's only a bit of a step further to be able to cut a tree down underwater and bring it to the surface.
The success story on Lake Pyman could very well be reproduced in other artificial lakes around the island and beyond. It's estimated that lakes and rivers throughout the world contain several 100 million submerged trees.
A small operation like we've got here, then it supplies an alternative source of timber and in some senses could relieve pressure from terrestrial operations in supplying some of this timber. I'm personally very proud, but also very proud of the company. They've taken a very big gamble. It's very happy to see. It's like giving birth to a child. It's when the first log came out of the water, it was much relief and joy, and we had quite a few beverages in the bar on the first night.
The success of this innovative project shows there is an alternative to unsustainable industrial logging. The international market is becoming more and more aware of this. The future, economically speaking as well, lies in sustainable forestry. Can initiatives such as Hydrowood show the way to a reconciliation between the lumberjack soul of Tasmania and its exceptional natural heritage? It's urgent that ecologists and foresters find a middle ground, as both sides increasingly find themselves at the mercy of something bigger than them both: global warming. In January 2016, several forest fires raged across Tasmania. More than just the eucalyptus burned. The remnants of Gondwana and trees that were over 1,000 years old also went up in smoke. The island experienced its most devastating summer in centuries. For botanist David Bowman, it's a tragedy.
Something really novel happened this summer, that we had an incredible number of lightning storms right across Western Tasmania, setting off 70 fires that have burnt over 100,000 hectares. 2% of the World Heritage Area had been burnt. This is absolutely unprecedented.
As fire was consuming the forest, the news came in. UNESCO refused the government's request. The borders of the area listed as World Heritage Wilderness would not be redrawn. Half of the island will remain a sanctuary. For David, the decision is decisive, because over the course of this long forest war, the forest has changed.
When we made the World Heritage Wilderness, the idea was it's a wilderness, it could look after itself. It was pure nature. The problem we now have is we have a sick patient, that this nature to survive needs humans. It needs humans, obviously, to stabilise the climate, but it needs humans to put the fires out.
Another battle is shaping up, but this time, both sides will have to join forces to face the consequences of climate change. Tasmania's forest needs humans more than ever, whether their intentions are to exploit it or to protect it.